Motoring 2010 on TSN is brought to you by Quaker State, real durable oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.
This week we're in beautiful Southern California. This is Santa Barbara, just north of Los Angeles, and it doesn't get any better unless you're into cars. And as we all know, Californians have a passion about the automobile. And so once a year, a lot of Californians leave the coast and they look forward to heading to the place that we're heading to this week, and that's the LA Auto Show.
We always think of this one as sort of the first base. We have like a baseball drawing, and Los Angeles is the first base, and then you have right in the middle of the whole field is Detroit Auto Show. Then you have Chicago, and then the last one would be New York. So this one is always the one where you sort of get your feet wet again after not having done it for about 7 months.
We're really excited to share this new design study concept with you here in Los Angeles, a city that continues to pave the way for advancements in both design and green.
And the things that we really focus on here in Los Angeles are the electric cars and any kind of range extender, any kind of alternative fuel, because California is pretty much known for that.
It's very important for Chevrolet and for Cadillac, Buick, GMC to make a big splash here in Los Angeles because it's the nation's largest car market here in California in terms of people that buy cars and trucks, in terms of the regulations that impact our industry, and in terms of the fact that California is a bellwether state. It's a trendsetter. If you get it right here, you're going to get it right everywhere. And if you're cool in California, you will eventually spread that coolness throughout the entire country.
You heard that a key part of our business strategy for Chevrolet is an unprecedented focus on green technology, and what better place to talk about it than here in Los Angeles in California.
This is where our Chevrolet Volt is going to be sold first initially. California and the Los Angeles Auto Show are very, very important.
LA is gaining every year. We see by the sheer number of people. The first time I came here probably 12, 15 years ago, there were barely 300 journalists in LA. Now we're more than 1,000, probably 1,500 journalists more, because this show is growing.
I mean, I think this time last year there was a great buzz about the revival of the LA show. You know, we've got California weather here, and Detroit in January is like, why would you be there? But there's some strange element with this show that the key luxury manufacturers, Lamborghini, Bentley, Aston Martin, Maserati, Ferrari, this is an enormous luxury car market, but those guys have decided to abandon the show. Unbelievable thinking. Why you would even consider losing Ferrari. You know, you should pay those guys to come here because it is the luxury capital of the world in terms of the automotive business. Maybe the thinking is that next year with Detroit show, there's so much activity with the big three. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen with GM, with Chrysler, with Ford, that they're thinking there's going to be a bigger media presence there. So if it's LA or if it's Detroit, maybe we get to stick with the old guns and go back to Detroit. But at least Chrysler's got lights on this year, so it doesn't look that much like a parking lot.
And let's be frank, California is the mecca of automobile in the United States. 33 million people, money's here, the trends are here, people are coming here. Detroit has seriously lost a lot of its luster in the recent years.
The question, is the LA Auto Show the nail in somebody else's coffin? The answer, later on Kenzie's Corner.
Back in the bad old days when Cadillac was going nowhere fast, it needed something to motivate the brand. Along came something called the art and science design language. The first car to get that new language was the Cadillac CTS. On this edition of Test Drive, the latest version of the car that kick-started the resurgence of the brand. The addition of the CTS-V, which now comes with an awesome 556 horsepower, underscored just how serious the once proud marque was about regaining its self-respect. enter the CTS Sport wagon. As with its siblings, the wagon is all about its hard-edged attitude. But my, what a looker. The Gawk meter was off the scale even when it was parked beside Acura's fetching ZDX crossover.
If you want versatility, this car has got more than its fair share. To begin with, it does come with a privacy cover. It also comes with 26 cubic feet of cargo space with the seats in the upright position, 58 cubic feet with them folded flat. But then you get the attention to detail. First of all, you can partition the load floor that simply. Now you put your groceries here, they don't end up at the other end of the car every time you touch the brakes. Now if you carry a large item, you've got this adjustable rack system that allows you to tie it down and lash your cargo properly. And finally, well, you'll see this net. Now this thing prevents anything that's back here from joining you up front in the event that you have to slam on the brakes. Now that anything could include a dog. The last thing you want is him joining you in the front seat. I mean, it all comes together exceptionally well.
The good news is that the CTS Sport wagon has the mechanical wherewithal to back up its good looks. With GM's up-level 3.6-litre V6 under the hood, it puts a healthy 304 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque at the driver's right loafer. Yes, it's motivating a rather portly 1851 kilograms, but that does not blunt its enthusiasm in the least. The use of a 6-speed manumatic certainly helps matters, as the engine is only a snappy kickdown away from the meat of its power curve. The disappointment is that the manual side only works when the shifter is actually in the manual position, and so it's a royal pain to get to the needed engine braking when it's wanted.
They say time's a great healer. Well, in this case, time has healed GM's interior woes. At one time, the General's interiors were woefully dreadful. Now, this CTS is delightful and as good as anything on the market. You can also buy as little of this car, around $53,000, or as much as you want. In this case, you add $8,700 to this car and you end up with everything from active headlights to a 40 gigabyte hard drive, complete with a navigation system and a backup camera. There are, however, two pet peeves. First of all, and this is bearing in mind this is a sports wagon. A good sports wagon, it gets paddle shifters on the steering wheel. This one doesn't. It also gets decent seats. Now, while these things are comfortable, they lack lateral support.
From here, the power reaches the road through a good all-wheel drive system. It brings better balance to the drive and limits unwanted wheel spin when the driver mats the gas from a standstill. What does surface is quickly dealt with by GM's advanced StabiliTrak electronic stability control system. The combined benefits of the powertrain transform the CTS Sports wagon into an enviable performer. It scoots to 100k in 7.4 seconds, and it accomplishes the more important 80 to 120k discipline in an equally quick 5 seconds.
If you're into technology, this CTS wagon has a ton of it. Everything from active headlights. Now they swivel as you turn the steering wheel, which brightens up the road at night. The other thing it's got, one little tiny button on the nav system. It's marked traffic. Now when you touch it, it shows you all of the problem areas in any given location. In this case, a blocked on-ramp. Now at the moment, this system only works in Vancouver, Montreal and Greater Toronto. However, as with all good technology, it will eventually trickle down to a town near you.
As for the handling characteristics, well, they match the rest of the wagon. When flogged through the pylons, the wagon and its sports suspension put on a stellar display. Body roll is limited to a couple of degrees, understeer is far enough out it is fairly described as benign, and the response to steering input is first rate. The anti-lock brakes are also strong, bringing 41.7 metres from 100k.
Sometimes you just have to ask yourself why. Why would anybody buy an SUV when they could buy this Cadillac CTS Sports wagon? It does everything an SUV can in terms of its capacity and utility. It also comes with a very good all-wheel drive system, but it also has one other intangible that most SUVs, well, they can't even begin to aspire to. This thing is surprisingly sporty.
certainly to get experience, I worked on, whatever was available to work on, family cars. Parents drove Mercuries and so on, but Rolls has always had a special spot for me. I always sort of figured that Rolls is the top, and that's what I set my sights for. That's what I wanted to be able to take apart and put together was a Rolls. I've got 3 cars. I've got a 1938 Rolls-Royce Phantom 3, a 1972 Silver Shadow, and a 1965 Plymouth Barracuda. My parents passed away a couple years ago, and I was in a position where I was able to buy them from their estate and carry the flame, so to speak. It's a pretty complicated engine in its day. It had hydraulic tappets and V12, which was very popular. Cadillac had their V16s and Lincoln had 12-cylinder. About 170 horsepower, but oodles of torque. Drives like a tank. When I'm driving the car, I'm just sort of thinking what this car was like when it was brand new, and I'm always amazed how well this car performs even today. And having driven a lot of cars from this era makes me appreciate even more how really, state-of-the-art this car was in its day. I think it'll outperform just about anything from this era. I just like them because it's the right way to build a car. If you were set out and cost was no objective, how would you do it? And I would like to think that that's the right way that you could put it together.
This whole journey has been completely surreal for me because, you come out of school and I think a lot of people end up starting off with more, taillights or mirrors or something, and so for them to really let us do some blue sky project right from the get-go was really exciting, but we didn't even really know it was going to be, a production project right away, so we're just cranking away and, trying to come up with this crazy thing, and as it kept passing each phase and getting more and more real, it was kind of like, wow, this is really happening, this is really exciting, and the whole thing has been humbling and a complete honor, and I'm growing exponentially every year just because I'm learning so much from this whole process.
Make sure you check out the motoring website at motoringtv.com. You can watch any program you may have missed. In fact, how about a trip down memory lane and see what we were driving as far back as 1988. Check out our blog, our photo gallery, and much more. It's all there at motoringtv.com.
It's time to update our long-term Kia Soul. While its external dimensions say compact, the reality is quite the opposite. To begin with, there's 19.3 cubic feet of cargo space with the 60/40 split folding rear seats upright and 53.4 cubic feet with them folded flat. The advantage is that all of the space is usable as the sides of the vehicle are vertical, the tailgate opening is nicely squared off, and the wheel well intrusions have been kept to a minimum. If there is a shortcoming to this package, it is that the front seat does not fold forward. This simple extension would allow a longer item to be carried inside the cabin and with the tailgate closed. Stay tuned for more updates.
The LA Auto Show began way back in 1907, and hats off to the organizers because this year they showcased some historical photos from years past, including 1927. A fire hit the show, nobody was killed, burned down all the tents, and all that was left, as you can see, were the carcasses of some great automobiles. All right, now let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
What I love about this show? Guys like Brad get all the gigs in California. Meanwhile, the rest of us are up here north of the 49th parallel, freezing our faces off in the frozen tundra, worrying about how we'll stop our expensive cars and trucks from corroding. Which leads me to a frequently asked question from viewers, customers in my shop, and actually Brad asked me this the other day. Additional rust protection, rust inhibitor, rust proofing, oil spraying, etc. Should I or shouldn't I do it? Is it a good deal or not? And Brad, I don't think there's a hard, fast answer for that. You know what? Everybody's conditions are a little bit different, and the way I answered Brad's question the other day, he sent it to me in a text, was I said, you know what? It's a love-hate relationship totally for a mechanic. We love the fact that it extends the life of our vehicles, makes them look better when they're older. It gives us a nucleus to work with when they get older, and just keeps us usually to the mechanical problems instead of the body falling apart. And we love the fact that it extends the life of our customers' vehicles to a point where they actually might get into some major mechanical repairs that we can sink our teeth into and, you know, make some money and feel like we're actually really mechanics, like rebuilding engines and trannies and doing the big stuff instead of just changing headlights and bulbs and oil changes, which is the first couple of years of most vehicle ownership. So, case in point, there's an area that's really critical and really prone to corrosion. That's the rear axle of the vehicle, and that's the steel brake line that brings the high pressure brake fluid across the axle to each wheel and the brakes at that wheel. Now that line, you can see that clip on the rear axle, that's a catch-all for rust. You get road salt and dirt in there, it gets wet in there, it doesn't dry out, and it'll corrode out right there. Now I had a buddy of mine bring his pickup truck in the other day. He called me, brake lights on, pedals almost to the floor. He's losing brake fluid. We go underneath, and a brake line on the rear axle of his truck, this is actually the brake line that I took off it, had burst right here. It had broken and popped open, all the fluid was leaking out. Now his truck was quite new, like 6 model years, and very low mileage, and he'd had it rust proofed or oil sprayed every season from new. So we were kind of surprised that this line would fail. Now the funny thing is, all the fittings came loose on it, which is unusual, and it's in real good shape everywhere except for where one clip on the rear axle, a steel clip, was folded over top of this area. It filled up with grit and dirt in behind there, road salt, and of course it kept the moisture in there, didn't dry out, didn't get enough air around it, and it corroded through there. So it just goes to show you that if you're around the Great Lakes or anywhere near the East Coast or anywhere near an area where it's extremely humid, corrosion and rust is a fact of life. You can't stop it, but you could slow it down, and that's the great thing about those products. They do work, they do slow down and limit the advancing of the rust, and they also give you a nucleus to work with when that vehicle's older. You're going to get some rust in certain areas, you will have to deal with that, but at least you'll have something to work with to fix it back up. We hate working on those vehicles because when we're finished, we're covered from top to toe in greasy, gungy goo. It's terrible to work on them, but you've got something to work with, so there's the love-hate part of it. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2010.
We got out the research telescope, looked 10 to 15 years into the future. What will the next generation of a potentially large group of car buyers want their vehicles to do? So based on what we've discovered, we came up with a concept that explores the packaging and design potential for a vehicle conceived exclusively around the city lifestyle. What you're looking at is Peanut, personal neo-urban transport. And I think it's kind of designed for downtown, the urban area, hence the name. Tight spaces, you want this little kind of smaller car, but yet safe and secure. And you want to be able to maneuver throughout the city traffic really easily, but still be able to take a couple friends with you, hence the 3 seats. You might be wondering how this runs. The modular rear engine bay depicted on the exterior by the blue composite material is designed to accommodate a wide variety of potential propulsion technologies, including a conventional small displacement internal combustion engine, a hybrid gasoline electric powertrain, or a battery electric powertrain. I think that the demographic for us is it's lifestyle. It's not really you're this old to have this, because I drive it. When you get in it, it feels great. It's like, wow, this is like a jet fighter. So I think it's totally just a lifestyle. There's no age limit.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2010 is brought to you by the most fuel-efficient crossover on the highway, the all-new Chevy Equinox.
Now, people who live in Los Angeles have a reputation for being relaxed and laid back. Well, when you consider that the city is located in a fog bowl, in a desert, and on a major earthquake fault, You might wonder, what do they have to be relaxed about? Still, it all works. But one thing that does get Angelenos a bit upset is, why isn't their auto show considered one of the most important in the world? I mean, LA is clearly the biggest single car market in the world. It's obviously the design center. Every car manufacturer has a design facility somewhere in this particular region. But the LA Auto Show has never quite been able to jump into the top rank. It's always been behind Detroit. Now, of course, Detroit is Motor City, and so it has a distinct advantage. LA tried competing with Detroit by having their show at about the same time in early January. One year they actually tried to open a few days ahead of Detroit, and that meant the press day was on New Year's Eve. Well, who wants to go to a car show on New Year's Eve? So they tried being a couple of weeks after Detroit. Well, that didn't work because there was no more news. Everything was already shown at Detroit. And then somebody got the bright idea, let's go before Christmas, late November, early December. This way, they can preempt Detroit and get all the news first. Now, they had a bit of luck as well. First of all, Detroit as a city, it's in pretty tough shape. The car industry, of course, is in the toilet, so the whole Motor City thing doesn't really carry the strength that it once did. A few manufacturers actually started dropping out of the Detroit show, Porsche, Nissan, Mitsubishi, and guess what? Their world didn't come to an end. So LA thought this might be the opportunity. And now their show really is pretty close to being in the very top rank around the world. And of course, there's one more thing. Early winter, is there really any place you'd rather be than Detroit? I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, Jim, when you look at this beautiful scenery here in Southern California, I've got to agree with you. However, we will be, in just a matter of a few weeks, be in Motor City for the Detroit Auto Show, a show that I still consider to be the big daddy of all car shows, because anybody who's anybody will be there, and we will be there. Until then, we'll see you next time as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
If they want, like they tell us, to compete with Honda Accord, Camry, Altima, Sonata, they need a V6. And they have one with the Vitara, because they took the 4-cylinder from the Vitara and modified it for this car. In order to really compete, they would need a V6.
Motoring 2010 on TSN has been brought to you by Quaker State, real durable oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.